6月7日金曜日、現在は夜の21時25分を回るところになります。アメリカの雇用統計発表前5分前という時間帯になります。現在のレートですが、ユーロドルが 1.32 の64、ドル円が95円の67銭、ユーロ円が126円の90銭、オージードルが 0.95 の21で推移しております。今回の、雇用統計ですけども、昨日からちょっとドル円がですね、底割れしているような状況で、95円台で今月の雇用統計を迎えることになるとは、ちょっと想像できなかった、ような状況にで、今月の雇用統計を迎えるということに、なりましたね。一応ですね、事前予想が、出ていますので、非農業部門雇用者数がプラスの 16.3 万人、で失業率が変わらず 7.5%、で事前予想は一応出てますね。ですけども、本日に限って言うとですね、もうすでに昨日、相当動いてますから、意外と値動きが、ないかもしれないですかね。むしろ、昨日動いた分のですね、反動で少し戻すんじゃないかなと思っては見てはいるんですけども、ちょっと、雇用統計ですからね、もうこれは出たとこ勝負になるかなというところ、いうのが正直な、ところですかね。ドル円に関しては95円台の一番安いところだと95円の29銭っていうのが、ついてますし、ユーロ円でも126円の20銭台っていうのが、ついてますね。逆にユーロドルは、堅調に推移してて、もうあとちょっとで 1.33 届こうかみたいなところまで来てたりするんですけども、そうですね、ADP がちょっと良くなかったんですかね。水曜日に、発表された ADP 全国雇用者数が、事前予想がプラスの 16.5 万人だったんですけども、プラスの 13.5 万人ということで、あんまりちょっと、予想には届かなかったので、今回はそんなに強い数字は出ないんじゃないかみたいな、雰囲気にはなってるんですけども、ちょっとどうなるかなっていうのが、この後注目かなというところですかね。ドル円に関してはですね、もう、結構いいとこまで下がってきてると思いますので、これ以上下がるっていうのは個人的にちょっと考えにくいかなと思ってるんですけども、今日ここまでで、ニューヨーククローズからですね、今日ここまででとりあえず、130ポイントぐらい動いているので、もしかしたらあと100ポイントぐらい落ちても不思議ではないかなっていうのはあるんですけども、そうですね、ちょっとこれは結果を待ちたいところではありますね。発表まであと1分少々というところになりましたので、指標の発表を待ちたいと思います。AT&T fell the most in more than 9 months in South Korean trade today after JP Morgan analysts cut profit estimates for the technology giant. The bank said orders for Samsung's new Galaxy S4 smartphone are slowing because of weak demand in Europe. And young brands, parents of KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut got a boost in early trade
After UBS upgraded the stock, the Swiss banking giant increased its ratings on the shares from neutral to buy. The stock is up about 1% in the pre-market. Those job numbers just seconds away now. We'll be talking again to Hovnanian CEO Ara Hovnanian. Also, John Sylvia, the chief economist at Wells Fargo, will weigh in with his reaction on the report. Plus, we've got team coverage from markets reporter Dominic Chu with the instant market reaction. Economics editor Mike McKee will give his real deal take. And chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook, who is at the Labor Department, is waiting in seconds to bring us those numbers. Remember, 163,000 jobs expected in the month of May. Peter?
175,000 jobs in the month of May, Betty, just above expectations. The unemployment rate, though, does tick up slightly to 7.6%. Very modest revisions, a net loss of 12,000 jobs for the prior 2 months. This report very consistent with what we've seen over the past few months. Let me walk you through it. Again, the 175,000 jobs added in the month of May. Our 6-month average now 194,000 jobs. The 12-month average 172,000.
出ましたね。失業率が、7.6%、で、非農業部門雇用者数がプラスの17万5000人ですね。予想が失業率が 7.5% のところが結果 7.6%、非農業部門雇用者数が、予想がプラス 16.3 万人のところが、17.5 万人ということで、17万5000人ですね。ということなので、非農業部門雇用者数の方は予想より強かったという数字ですね。ですけども、失業率の方が 0.1 ポイント、悪化しているという、結果になっております。その結果を受けまして、ドル円は、上昇してましたけど、また96円を割るような、展開ですかね。ドル円上昇してユーロドル下がるみたいな、そんな感じになってますかね。とりあえず初動はドル買いという反応で、帰ってきてますね。
Average weekly hours 34.5, also unchanged. Betty, bottom line again, a report pretty consistent with what we've seen over the last few months. Not a blockbuster, but not a report suggesting the economy is grinding to a halt.
失業率が 7.6% で、非農業部門雇用者数がプラスの17万5000人という結果になっております。
They are, and we were up about 3 points going into the number. Now we're up about 6-7 points here. Dow Jones up about 50, Nasdaq up about 10 points. We are just off session highs. But what's
ドル円もあとユーロドルも少し、値動き迷ってるような感じですかね、これは。発表後ドル円は96円の30銭ぐらいまで上がったんですけども、そこからまた戻してる感じですかね。
Ticking higher, selling off the safety of some of those treasuries. 2.09% the last trade for 10-year U.S. government notes. On the currency side of things, $1.3241 for euro, and on the commodity side, we'll finish off on crude 95.12. Their gold futures, Betty 14.04 the last trade there.
Okay, thank you, Dom. I know you're going to stand by with me as you're watching the markets carefully, but Mike, the real deal on these job numbers.
Well, it's about as mediocre, lukewarm, acceptable report as you can get. Most of the numbers come straight down the middle. As Peter was reporting, the jump in the unemployment rate, not bad news because, of course, more people came into the labor force.
あまりそこまで、大きな値動きにはなってないですかね。一応初動はドル買いという反応で、ユーロドルもドル円も、動いてはいますけども、ドル円はまた再び、95円台に戻ってきてますね。
Federal furloughs were accounted for, and I'll tell you what I mean here. Government jobs fell by 14,000. Local government jobs, we were looking for a decline there. They actually rose. It may be all at the federal level, and it may be that if you were furloughed, you weren't counted as on the payroll. That did not depress average weekly hours, and so average hourly earnings rise on the month. So all in all, not a bad report at all. Leaves us about where we had been, treading water, not really gaining a lot of ground. It certainly doesn't make the case for tapering, though, Betty.
It does not, and that last point, Mike, is maybe one of the reasons why you are seeing a slight rally in the equity markets.
ね、ここに来てドル円が下落してますね。ちょっとまた新安値切ってきましたね。90、今5円の 10銭、9銭というところで、推移してますね。ちょっとこれこのままいくと95円も割る感じに、今割りましたね。90、ドル円95円一瞬割りましたね。逆にユーロドルの方が上がって 1.32 の今80まで、来てますね。初動はドル買いで反応したんですけども、その後ちょっと急激に、ドル円下げてユーロドルを上げてますね。ドル円に関しては一瞬、95円も割って、94円、ギリギリつけましたかね、このチャートだと。
And so there is some impact there, I think, from the Affordable Care Act, where there is some cutback in part-time workers.
So to you, there are some warning signs here, John, that tell you that perhaps we may see some more weakness going forward. John?
Yes?
Oh, okay. I was directing that question.
I thought you were talking to someone else.
No, I was directing that question to you. You see what I was saying was that the points that you were making tell you that there's room for a continued bearish scenario on jobs.
Well, bearish in the sense that I think that, when you look at the 220,000 average, 3-month moving average in the prior months, I think we're slowing down. Not bearish in the sense of, really more difficult times going forward, but the economy in the second half probably picks up a little bit. But we are still in that zone of
ちょっと全体的に値動き迷ってる感じですかね。またドル円は95円割ったところからまた急激に戻してきてまして、現状95円の60銭台ですね。ユーロドルの方は 1.32 の80ぐらいまであったんですかね。ですけども、またちょっと、反落して 1.32 の50ぐらいまで戻してきてますね。ちょっとね、動き、方向感定まらないような状況ですね。
What about your own hiring plans?
We have hired, we went from a trough of about 1,400 people to about 1,700 people just in the last year and a half. So we have been hiring both directly and, more importantly, indirectly, the plumbers, electricians, the carpenters all over the country.
Sort of that halo economy or the halo jobs
We
effect.
have a huge ripple effect in the economy.
And Betty, let me just weigh in on what's going on in construction in the month. Up 7,000 in the month, so again, providing support to the economy. We did see a loss the prior month of 2,000, but construction consistently, you look over the last couple of months, positive for sure, certainly providing a boost for the economy right now.
Right, construction jobs, and that goes right into Ara's business, of course. And Ara, a lot of people say, though, that the Fed interest rate hikes, that could eventually be a big damper for the housing market. Do you expect that when that happens eventually, when the Fed starts to taper, is that going to really hit the housing market?
No, I think well, first of all, my late father founded the company over 50 years ago. We've been through a lot of interest rate environments, a lot of ups and downs in the housing cycles. In the early 1980s, mortgage rates in the recovery were in the low teens, 12%, 13%, 14%, and we had more housing starts than we do right now, by almost double. So that doesn't trouble me. What will change is that today, thanks to the Fed helping lower rates, people can buy a bigger house than they ever dreamed, a 3,000, 4,000 square foot house. They will still need shelter ultimately because housing demand is driven by population growth. It may change from a 4,000 foot house to a 3,000 to a 2,500 foot house or maybe a townhouse.
Right.
But they will need
But
shelter and housing will still need to be built.
Well, John, chime in on that, on the housing market. Is what Ara describing in terms of the reaction when we finally do see some tightening in lending rates, is it going to be worse off than we might actually expect?
No, I don't think so. I think you got it right. At the beginning, as rates rise modestly, home price appreciation still exceeds the increase in the mortgage rate. So I would suspect that a modest increase in interest rates will not be very much dampening in the housing market. Second, a lot of our housing today is multifamily, and we still are in a position where the absorption of units in multifamily still exceeds completions.
So from my point of view, no. I think a modest rise in interest rates at the beginning, 50 to 100 basis points, certainly in mortgage rates, is not going to be much of a damper on housing, given the demographics and home price appreciation.
Mike.
I just want to note that I've been looking through this data, and what strikes me about this report is how remarkably consistent it is with what we have been seeing in other data. And John sort of made the point about a slowdown. Well, we've been expecting a second quarter slowdown. That was the forecast, that we'd drop into the ones with growth, which is about where we're running. So you wouldn't expect a whole lot of strength in hiring. But the ISM numbers and others have told us that manufacturing was weak. We saw manufacturing jobs go.
アメリカの雇用統計発表から10分経過しましたけども、結果がですね、失業率が 7.6% で、非農業部門雇用者数が17万5千人、プラスの17万5千人という結果になっておりまして、現状、そうですね、ちょっとドル円の動きが激しいですかね。95円割って一瞬で96円に戻したりと、ちょっと方向感定まってないような値動きになってますね。ユーロドルが 1.32 の40で推移してまして、ドル円が96円の今04銭で推移してますね。ユーロ円が127円の13銭、同時ドルが 0.95 の02で推移しております。ちょっとそうですね、方向感定まらないというか、値動き迷ってるような感じですね。
At UBS, we work with some of the most ambitious clients in the world. They're interested in building wealth and passing it along to their family. That's why we have specialists in family services to help our clients preserve and protect their wealth.
Continuing our coverage of today's jobs numbers, remember 175,000 jobs created, better than the 163,000 economists surveyed had expected, and much better than what John Sylvia had predicted. Or Wells Fargo's chief economist. Staying with us, Chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook at the Labor Department, who broke those numbers, and markets reporter Dominic Chu is keeping an eye on the market reaction. John, I want to get your take on what you think this number, though, means for the Fed in the next few months.
Well, I think that listening to people on the desk here, the rise in the unemployment rate really, I think, confirms for them that the Fed stays in the game, that there's not going to be any tapering this year with an unemployment rate that seems sticky or even rising a little bit, staying around 7.6%. So I think the Fed's pretty much on hold. I think they're going to continue with the QE3 through the rest of the year at this point.
Well, they'll be on hold until, let's say, John, the next month we get a surprise in the labor report, right?
Indeed. I mean, they're as we say, data dependent. They're looking at the data and see. But, my sense is at this point in time, that fluctuation that may be, down to 7.4 or 7.3, whatever it is probably not going to tell the Fed anything other than, hey, there's volatility in the numbers. We're a long way from our 6.5% unemployment rate. I don't think they're going to change policy this year. Much more likely maybe January or February of next year as we turn the year, seeing what the flow of the data is and whether there's continued improvement over time with the unemployment rate, such that likely sometime next year we hit 6.5%. But right now, I don't see the Fed changing path.
All right, John, thank you so much. And you know what? I think the traders are at least agree with you and with your interpretation on QE. John Sylvia, the chief economist at Wells Fargo. Futures right now continue at their highs of the session. Coming up, a very different take on the jobs market. Mississippi's Governor Phil Bryant will be telling us how to boost jobs in states like his, where the jobless rate is stubbornly high, one of the nation's highest. And later, we'll be going to Arkansas to find out what is on shareholders' minds at Walmart's annual meeting as they consider who might be the next CEO, and also how to keep those shelves fully stocked. Inventory, a very big issue for Walmart. Stay in the loop.
Why are the growth markets of Asia Pacific growing? One reason is the energy and drive of entrepreneurs. That's why we work hard to deliver tailored investment advice and solutions to help them reach their personal and financial goals.
Well, we are keeping our jobs in focus and the economy this morning. One state that is struggling, though, to recover is Mississippi. Its jobless rate is at 9%, one of the highest in the United States. Household poverty is the highest in the nation as well at nearly 21%. Well, with me now is the man who has the huge challenge.
雇用統計発表からですね、20分、経過してまして、結果の方が失業率が 7.6%、非農業部門雇用者数が17万5千人、プラスの17万5千人増ということで、失業率の方は、事前予想に届かず、0.1 ポイント悪化してたんですけども、非農業部門雇用者数の方はですね、事前予想よりは良かったということで、それを受けて、ドル買いで反応したんですけども、その後ちょっとドル円急落したりしてまた戻したりとか、ちょっと結構荒っぽい値動きが続いてますかね。ですけども、ちょっと全体的に方向感が出てないというかですね、ちょっと迷っているような感じの値動きではありますかね。今、ニューヨークダウの先物が前日比でプラスの46ドル高ですので、そんなにめちゃくちゃ交換してるっていうわけでもないみたいですけども、ちょっと、そうですね、この後ニューヨークダウの現物が始まりますので、10時半からですね、ちょっとその動きも見てみないことには何とも言えないんですけども、ちょっと現段階だと値動き、方向感が出ない感じですかね。ドル円も一瞬94円台突っ込んだりもしたんですけども、そこからまた戻してきたりっていう感じですので、ちょっと現段階では評価が定まってないのかなというような感じの値動きになっております。
We've been talking about housing and how housing has been adding onto the jobs market, but in Mississippi, though, housing prices are still declining. They're down almost 2%, I think, in the last month. So that's not helping job creation right now. What are you going to do about that?
It is not, but one of the things we're doing is workforce development. We've got to realize that a good workforce includes people who you can put into the market in manufacturing, in home building. So plumbers, electricians, carpenters are something that should be valued for years and years, and we still do a lot of that.
How are they going to get those jobs, though, if housing prices are declining?
Hopefully, when Yokohama brings 2,000 new employees, those employees will be able to go out and buy a house and buy a car. The way you build that economy is you get people jobs. And someone with a job can get a mortgage, and they can actually pay that mortgage, which is the important part of it. So we build the economy, get more jobs, and then that's when the housing market begins to grow.
Governor, health care is a big cost for Mississippi. I mean, you do have the highest obesity and diabetes rate in your state. You're trying to implement Obama's health care reforms. It's going to add on, I think, another $2 billion in costs. So how are you going to pay for that?
You know, actually, we're not. We're trying to resist the expansion of Obamacare in Mississippi just now because we know it will add another $2 billion. We're trying to go our community health care centers, which are called FQHCs. You can put about $62 million in those, and we're furnishing health care to 325,000 Mississippians. So I've got $62 million. If I can put more and grow 22 more FQHCs, I can add.
Resist implementing that.
We are.
Okay.
I think if you look at the governmental budget office, they say you could lose 800,000 jobs across America with the implementation of Obamacare. So,
okay. I know, of course, the White House has different numbers on this, but you know,
and that's one of the things we don't know. You don't really know what the outcome will be.
Governor, I know, just on a quick note, you're here because it's going to be Mississippi Day tomorrow in Central Park, right? That's why you're here in New York.
That's right. We'll have a lunch prepared. Everybody can come out to Central Park, have some catfish, and enjoy some good country music. Everyone's invited. We're the only state in the nation that has the opportunity to do this in Central Park, so we're excited about it.
Southern hospitality.
Come on down. We'll see you all there.
Thank you so much for joining me, Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more jobs coverage. Our Bloomberg Big Number is a snapshot on the changing labor market. 1.8 million. It's the number of new construction jobs that the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts will be added to the economy by 2020. It is the biggest overall number for any industry. As we heard, in May, construction jobs rose by 7,000. And we are watching the dollar off of this labor report. It is weaker because investors seem to believe that with this jobs number, the jobless rate going slightly up, and the surprise only slightly to the upside means that the Fed is going to stay in the markets with QE, and that means a lower dollar. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be digging deeper into the jobs report with PIMCO's CEO, Mohamed El-Erian.
本日のアメリカの雇用統計、失業率が 7.6%、 非農業部門雇用者数が17万5000人増、プラスの17万5000人増ということで、事前予想に対してはですね、ちょっと失業率は悪化して、非農業部門雇用者数は、改善してというか増加してという、ちょっとそうですね、判断分かれるような結果になりましたね。ドル円またここに来て上がってきてまして、現状で96円の50銭台までつけてますね。この後のニューヨークダウの動きも、でその後のロンドンフィックスも含めてですね、ちょっとこの後どうなっていくのかっていうのが、注目されるところかなと思います。特に、一瞬ではありましたけども、ドル円は94円台もつけましたからね、この後、まだ一波乱二波乱あるんじゃないかなと、個人的には思っております。それでは、本日の雇用統計、この辺で録画を終了したいと思います。